Hello, Year 12. This is Mr. Azapadi with a video about Buddhism. So we are starting a new unit. We've just finished that bit of work that you did at home about the Four Noble Truths. Was the end of the Four Noble Truths. Well, of course, we'll come back to Four Noble Truths many times. So we've got 2 more units to do. We're going to do about meditation, and then we're going to do some stuff about samsara, which is really about the teachings surrounding the wheel of life. So this first lesson is about Samatha and Vipassana meditation. A lot of the first bit will be stuff that we've covered in GCSE already. Maybe there's some extra details in there. But the second bit is new stuff, and it's looking at the differences or the debate around which is more important, Samatha or Vipassana. So what we're going to do is, first part of the lesson, I'll send you the slides, and it'd be good if you could print them off. If not, then just watch and make notes as you go through the video. But look, don't write out everything on the video. That would be pointless. It'd be better if you can print off the slides and not annotate them. If I say anything as I go through them that you need to add, then add them to them. Then the next part that's going to be the basic information about Samatha and Vipassana, and then the debate part, the part about which is more important. You need to print off the slides. I'll put them on separately, because I want you to print them off in a bigger size. These slides here, the first bit, you can just print off 3 sides a page. You don't need a massive. But then the one at the end, you need bigger, I think, to read it properly. Okay, let's go through them. So Samatha and Vipassana are the 2 main forms of Buddhist meditations, particularly in the Theravada tradition. You do have Samatha and Vipassana actually throughout Buddhism in lots of different parts of the Buddhist world. So there are Mahayana Buddhists who practice Samatha and Vipassana, but in Theravada, these 2 forms of meditation tend to be the main kinds of meditation that are used, and understanding the difference between them is really important. So here's some basics. The Pali word for meditation is bhavana. That is the word that's used in the Pali canon. Bhavana. Bhavana means to develop or to cultivate something. So it's a metaphor that comes from agriculture. If you think about, ancient India was an agricultural society. There was growing crops and growing food to eat and stuff would have been part of people's everyday experience. So, using metaphors from that would have been a normal thing to do. So what are you trying to grow or develop? So instead of trying to grow or develop a crop or some food or whatever, what you're trying to grow or develop is your mind. You're trying to develop your mind in certain ways. And so that's what meditation is about, trying to change the way that you think, change the way your mind works through this practice. There's lots of different kinds of Buddhist meditation, but the most important is this division between Samatha and Vipassana. Some people say, I think it might be Vipassana. Samatha, Vipassana, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to be able to pronounce it, you just need to know it. Samatha and Vipassana is what I'm going to call it. Okay, so we'll start with Samatha. Samatha is sometimes called calming meditation, concentration meditation, sometimes it's called. It aims to bring about a calm, clear and focused state of mind. It's connected to this step in the Eightfold Path, right concentration. So that is obviously one of the steps that's to do with meditation. Right concentration is the idea of being able to focus your mind completely on one object. And obviously that is not actually easy. Anyone who's tried meditation, if you've ever tried, you might find that your mind drifts off. It wanders off to think about various different things. It's very difficult to focus on just one object all the time. So in Samatha meditation, what you do is you focus your mind on one particular object. The idea is to gradually develop a state of mind that is completely focused on the object so that all distractions or thoughts die away. That it's not, Buddhists are aware that this is not easy, and that when you start to focus on one thing, you inevitably get distracted. In Buddhism, the idea is not to kind of judge yourself harshly if you can't concentrate, because it's a gradual process. The idea is that if you just gradually, if your mind drifts away, you just notice it's drifting away, and you bring it back to the thing you were concentrating on, and you just do it again and again and again. Gradually, over time, you'll develop that concentration. That's the idea. Okay, the most common object to focus on is your breathing. That meditation is called the mindfulness of breathing. So that's probably the most common Samatha meditation. You just focus on your breathing. There's a video link there. I think I've used it in classes before. I use this link so often that people here might have done this meditation loads of times. If you're in my form, then you I think we used to use that meditation every time we did meditation. Was it Meditation Mondays? Anyway, whatever it was. But I'll put the link in the underneath the video, just in case you want to watch the video again. It's truthfully, the video there is not a Buddhist video, because nowadays people use meditation in lots of different contexts, and this guy talks about 1 minute meditation and moment to moment meditation. Well, that's not really a Buddhist thing, but the basic idea of mindfulness of breathing is there. You just sit there and you watch the breath coming in. You notice the breath coming in and going out. Sometimes people focus particularly on the tip of their nose to feel the air going in and out through the nose. Some people focus on the diaphragm, the way that your diaphragm moves when you take in the air and breathe out the air. So there's different places people might focus, but the idea is just to try and focus your mind completely on your breathing, so you're not thinking about anything else. You're just focused on your breathing. Not to be really harsh with yourself if you do drift away, but just to continually say, oh, my mind's drifted away, I'm daydreaming, I'm thinking about something else. Bring it back, and eventually you'll develop this concentration. So to understand what you're trying to do in meditation, Buddhism has these concepts of the defilements and the jhanas. So what you're trying to do is overcome the defilements and reach the jhanas. So what are the defilements? The defilements are negative qualities of the mind which stop people from being concentrated. And what are these things? There are 5 things. Desire for sense objects, so craving stuff like food or whatever it is. So you're craving that stuff and that distracts you. Secondly, negative feelings towards others. So you're sat there in meditation and you think, oh, that person said this about me, or that person did this, or I hate this person for that reason. That gets you distracted. Another reason you might drift off. Tiredness. You start falling asleep. A lot of people end up falling, when they first start meditation, they start falling asleep. You can overcome that through meditation, though. Overexcitement and depression. These are 2 sides of the same coin, according to Buddhism. If you're too excited about stuff, you can't concentrate. You just always think about things. If you're depressed about stuff, the opposite side, then you can't concentrate either because you're too focused on your depression. And last one, doubt about whether the Buddhist path really works. So the idea is that in your mind, you constantly have, when you're meditating, when you start, a doubt. Well, is this actually doing anything? Is it helping? That's something you've got to overcome, because you can't concentrate unless you think there's a point in concentrating. So those are the things, by gradually focusing your mind, you should be able to get rid of those 5 negative things. When you get rid of them, you reach what's called the jhanas or dhyanas. There's different ways of saying it. One's Pali and the other's Sanskrit. Jhana or dhyana. This is what you reach when you successfully do samatha meditation. And the idea is that most people who do a meditation would say you're not going to reach the jhanas in your first 10 minutes of meditation. These are something that you reach when you really get into it, after years of being a meditator maybe. So the first 4 levels of jhana are these, and these are the 4 that you most usually hear talked about. So, like I say, these happen when you gradually get the 5 defilements to die away. So the first jhana, you feel a state of concentration accompanied by joy and rapture. You still have thoughts. So there are still some thoughts in your head, but you are very concentrated. There are some sort of thoughts. Now, joy is happiness. Rapture means kind of physical sensation of joy. So in other words, they say that your concentration, you actually feel like happiness in a physical way. Now, sometimes they say the hairs in the back of your neck can stand up and stuff like that. It brings this kind of happiness in a physical sense to you. Second jhana, your thoughts die away. You don't have any distracting thoughts. You're just concentrated, but you also feel the joy and the rapture. Third, the rapture dies away. The interesting thing is that actually as the jhanas go up, less happens rather than more. More and more things are dying away. So the bodily sensation of happiness dies away. The hairs in the back of your neck standing up, whatever, calms down, and you just feel this very peaceful happiness. In the 4th jhana, even joy dies away. You don't actually feel this happiness. You just feel peace. it's supposed to be a good state of mind, but it's not joy in the sense that we would think of it. It's just undisturbed peace. And that's what you're trying to get to in Samatha. Complete, focused peace. Now, you don't really need this much stuff that much, but it's just worth knowing. Above these are 4 more jhanas known as the formless jhanas. It's said that once you get up to these formless jhanas, it's very difficult to imagine if you've not experienced them. So you feel you get to these states of mind that you basically can't put into words. So there's the jhanas. Now, the jhanas are impermanent states of mind in which the defilements are only overcome temporarily. So you get rid of those 5 bad things in your mind and you get really concentrated, but they don't last forever. It's an impermanent thing. Most forms of Buddhism, particularly the Theravada tradition, teach that Samatha meditation does not, can you change that, lead all the way to nirvana. It is seen as a preparation for Vipassana meditation. However, this idea is contradicted by some parts of the Pali canon. There are examples of people reaching nirvana by practicing Samatha meditation. So look, it's complicated, and as we'll see, there's a kind of, there has developed in Theravada Buddhism a formal way of talking about Samatha meditation. And in that formal way, Samatha leads to these impermanent states of mind called jhanas, which are useful in helping you progress towards nirvana, but then it doesn't help you reach nirvana itself. Then Vipassana meditation is what gets you to nirvana. That is the way it's been kind of formalized. It's been worked into a system. However, as we will see in more detail later, in the Pali canon it never says, oh, Samatha only Vipassana leads to enlightenment, and Samatha doesn't lead to enlightenment. In fact, people practice Samatha and get to enlightenment in the Pali canon just using that form of just using that kind of meditation. It seems that what has happened is that the Buddha used these terms Samatha and Vipassana in the Pali canon, but he didn't really use them to refer to different kinds of meditation. He more used to refer to different kinds of things or experience that happen within your meditation. So you might just meditate, and certain things in that meditation could be described as Samatha and other things as Vipassana. It's only after the Buddha's time, it seems, that this scheme has worked out where Vipassana and Samatha are separate. But for our purposes at the moment, let's stick with that second understanding and say, okay, from what later Theravada tradition has said, Samatha does not lead to enlightenment. It just leads to these impermanent states of mind, but very positive states of mind. The jhanas are concentrated, focused states of mind. They're good things, but they're not the same as nirvana. Bit more about Samatha. Breathing is not the only object that can be used to focus Samatha meditation. There's a famous book called the Visuddhimagga. Visuddhimagga means the path to purification. In other words, it's about the path to nirvana. It's a famous Theravada book written in the 5th century. It's from Sri Lanka. It lists 40 things that people can be focused on. It also says that certain objects are better for certain types of people. So yes, breathing is one thing that you can concentrate on. But if you've got a certain personality, there are other things that you might concentrate on. People attached to material things, so if you're a very materialistic person, you should focus on decomposing corpses. Now, this is an actual practice that people do. Sometimes people might think in their minds of a decomposing corpse. But I actually met a monk once who had lived in Sri Lanka, and he said that because it's a Buddhist country, the police allow Buddhist monks to go to the police mortuary where the dead bodies are kept, in criminal cases or whatever, and sit there and stare at the decomposing corpses while they're meditating. Now, why do they concentrate on those things? A bit odd. Well, I guess the idea would be that people who are attached to material things, it's because they don't understand impermanence. They kind of feel like, oh, material things will bring me happiness. Well, if you focus on decomposing corpse, that means that you can develop the idea that actually, everything's impermanent, so I should stop being so materialistic, because, you can't take things with you. Everyone's going to die one day. All the things that your material objects that you crave are going to disappear. All that kind of stuff. Now, that's interesting. This is just a little aside. That's kind of interesting because if that's why they're focusing on decomposing corpses, that actually looks more like a Vipassana practice, because it's Vipassana that tries to get you to develop insights into things like impermanence. So that could be used as a little bit of evidence that actually Vipassana and Samatha are not so separate. Anyway, that's just an aside. Other ones. People with lots of faith in Buddhism are said to should focus on the qualities of the Buddha and the Dharma. So in other words, they should call to mind the good qualities, the wisdom of the Buddha, the truthfulness of the Dharma, and just think about those things. So it doesn't have to be a physical thing that you concentrate on. It can be something in your mind. Negative, hateful people should calm their mind by focusing on discs of particular colour. This is a thing, in Buddhist monasteries, they sometimes have just a disc of colour. I just mean a circle of colour. They might have it painted on the wall, or it might be just on the floor in front of them, and you just look at that disc. So instead of your breath, you focus on that disc, you look at it. If your mind wanders away from it, you bring it back. The idea is that certain colours are supposed to be good for, if you're a negative person, make you more happy. Maybe like yellow. That's what my kids always say, that yellow is the happiest colour because Mr. Happy is yellow. Who knows whether that's true? Okay, we're almost at the end of Samatha. The Brahma Viharas. Now, Brahma Viharas are a form of meditation that's classified as Samatha, but are different from other kinds of Samatha meditation, because it's not only about developing concentration. In these meditations, people try to develop certain positive feelings in their mind, and there are 4 of these feelings. By far the most common form of Brahma Vihara meditation is metta, the metta bhavana, or metta meditation. And that is a meditation on metta, or loving kindness. So you basically try to generate feelings of loving kindness towards other people. Next is karuna, which is compassion. So that is basically compassion for people who are suffering. You try to feel sympathy and a willingness to help people who are suffering. Mudita is joy for those who are experiencing good fortune. I always think it's interesting this, because not many philosophies or religions have a special place in their thing for this. Trying to develop joy for other people who are experiencing happiness. So like, I don't know, say if your friend's won the lottery, or has won a prize, or has got a great result in their exams, you have to try to develop good feelings towards them. I think it's actually really difficult. It's much easier to feel karuna, compassion for people who are suffering. It's quite difficult to develop joy for other people who are experiencing happiness. As Morrissey released a song once called "We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful." Great song. It's a shame that he turned out to be a terrible person, Morrissey. But great name for a song, because I think a lot of people do not like it when their friends become successful. Maybe that's just me though. Maybe I'm a terrible person. The last one is upekkha, equanimity. That is a state of mind where it's a kind of culmination of the rest. The idea is that you're supposed to be loving towards people and compassionate and have joy for those who have good fortune. But at the same time, you're supposed to be level-headed. Equanimity is a state of not being overly excited or troubled by the feelings of others. For Buddhism, this is important. You should balance being loving and kind with a sense of level-headedness and not getting too excited or worried about the feelings of others. Because their idea would be, well, you're of no use to help someone if you're just like, you can't cope with thinking about their suffering. It's not going to benefit them. So yes, you should think about the worries of others and care about it, but not to the extent that it's bringing you down. Now, the most common way so metta is the most common of these, and the most common way to develop metta is to think of someone you are friends with. So what you do in the meditation, this is something they do in a lot of Buddhist meditation classes, so something I've done many times in the past. So you would sit there, close your eyes, and you'd think about someone who you like, someone you're friends with. It's supposed to be someone that you're not romantically interested in, because they say that can distract you. It's a distraction. It's supposed to be like a friend. So you think about that person and you just wish them well. Sometimes you repeat in your head, like, may you be well, happy and peaceful. Not out loud, you just think it. So that, you think about your friend, and that's supposed to be the easy bit. You think about, you will wish well to your friend. Then you think about someone you have no strong feelings towards. So it's supposed to be someone you kind of know, but you don't know them very well, like the postman or something, and you just wish them well. And then you're supposed to call to mind someone that you dislike, and that obviously that's supposed to be harder as you get to the person you dislike, but you're supposed to wish them well. So that's the idea. You gradually, and then once you usually when I've been in class and you do this, you go through those three people: someone you like, someone you have no strong feelings towards, someone you dislike, and then what they do is they start radiate this loving kindness to the whole world, and you're supposed to try and feel that sense of loving kindness towards everyone. Yeah, that's how it works. So again, I think this is an interesting one because they're labelled as samatha meditation, but it doesn't quite fit into samatha, because samatha is supposed to be just about concentration, and these are not just about concentration. In one way they are, because you're concentrating on a certain thing, on metta, karuna, mudita or upekkha, but you're also trying to develop that quality in your mind. So it's a bit more than just concentration. I think this is the last thing about samatha. Interesting thing, there is a link between samatha meditation and the realms of rebirth in Buddhism. It is said when you reach certain stages of meditation, you are experiencing what it's like to be in the higher realms of rebirth. So, it's thought that beings in the higher realms have a more concentrated, focused and calm mind than beings in the lower realms. So when you meditate, you are kind of briefly experiencing what it's like to have the mind state of someone in a higher realm. Most notably, you can see this in the Brahma Viharas, because Brahma Vihara means the home of the gods. Brahma is God, and Vihara is home or place where someone lives. And so it literally means the home of the gods. So the idea is that when you cultivate these qualities, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, you're experiencing the state of mind that you have in the Deva realm, because the Devas are gods and nice. There we go. Okay, let's talk about Vipassana. There is not going to be as much to say about Vipassana. It's a bit more, in some ways it's straightforward, but in some ways it's a bit more complicated, because actually understanding the basics of what Vipassana is a bit complicated. So Vipassana, or it's often called insight meditation, sometimes wisdom meditation, involves mindfully observing one's own bodily and mental experiences in order to develop wisdom. So the idea is that the classic idea would be that you do samatha to focus your mind and get that focus. Without that focus, you couldn't do Vipassana because you'd be too distracted. You need to have a certain level of focus to be able to do Vipassana meditation. Once you've got that concentration through samatha, you can then turn your mind inwards, but not perhaps in that directly focused way. In Vipassana, you're not just focusing on one object, not just on the breathing, but you are taking that focused state of mind, that calm state of mind, and just observing your bodily experiences, and and your mental experiences. So what's going on in your body and your mind. And for Buddhism, when you do that, when you observe what's going on in your body and your mind with a focused, concentrated state of mind, you will start to develop wisdom. You will start to look at things more clearly. You will start to understand things at a deeper level. So the relationship between samatha and vipassana, as it says in the white box here, is expressed in a Buddhist simile, a comparison. If you want to see yourself clearly in a bowl of water, remember, did they have mirrors back then? Who knows? But most people wouldn't have had a mirror. So say if you want to see yourself clearly in a bowl of water, that would be a way you could see yourself. You first must still the water and remove any mud or leaves in the bowl. Only after this can you begin to study yourself. In the same way, it is said that when the mind has been stilled through samatha meditation, it is only when the mind has been stilled through samatha meditation that we can begin to study our mind and develop wisdom. So samatha is the calming, then we start to look into our mind and develop wisdom. Vipassana meditation is linked to the wisdom part of the Eightfold Path, but also to some of the meditation parts. So it's linked to right view. Right view is having a true understanding of the universe, particularly of the three characteristics. That's the three marks of existence, which is dukkha, anatta, anicca, and the Four Noble Truths, principally the idea that craving leads to suffering. So Vipassana is linked to those things because, yes, you can get an understanding of those things in a theoretical way by reading books, and you can read Buddhist books and understand the universe has these three characteristics: dukkha, anicca, anatta. All things are, there's suffering, there's no permanent self, and everything's impermanent. And then you can read the Four Noble Truths and say, yes, craving is bad because it leads to suffering. But Vipassana meditation is trying to get you to have a deeper understanding of those things, not to understand them in theory, but to understand them in a way that makes an actual difference to your life. So most obvious thing would be, instead of if you're successful in your Vipassana meditation, instead of just thinking, yes, craving is bad for you, you actually start to stop craving, because you actually feel deep within you, craving is not good for you. And when you start to feel that craving is not good for you, your craving starts to dissipate, starts to disappear, because if you actually deep down feel that, my craving is not going to bring me happiness, then you just won't crave. That's the idea. It's also linked to right mindfulness. Mindfulness is a bit different from concentration. So mindfulness is being aware of one's thoughts and feelings. It's different from concentration, which is just on one object. It is a broader awareness of one's mind and body. So the idea in Vipassana, rather than just a one-pointed concentration like you have in Samatha, you have a broader understanding of a broader awareness, just feeling what's going on in your mind and body. There's a video here with a guy talking about Vipassana meditation and how it works. It's worth watching that, really, because he kind of talks, it's kind of weird the way he talks about it, but he talks about, like, one practice they sometimes do in Vipassana is labeling, where you just are conscious of what's going on in your mind and your body, and you just label the experience. So he's like, imagine you're sitting there and you suddenly feel an itch in your forehead. You just label it in your mind. You just say, there's an itch. And you don't do anything with it. You don't scratch it. You just label it and label it. That's an itch. That's an itch. And you keep on labeling it as it keeps going. And what he says is, like, eventually the itch will just disappear or go away. And he's like, well, that will if that kind of thing, the idea is that repeated over and over again, that will give you an understanding of impermanence that you can't just get from reading in a book. If you feel your emotions changing and just watch them very calmly, you'll get a deep understanding of the way in which things are impermanent. You'll get a deep understanding of the lack of any fixed self as you notice your states of mind and emotions changing. It'll give you this deep understanding that you are not a fixed self, and your sense of who you are is always changing. Same thing, if cravings come into your mind, instead of acting on them, if you just let them drift away, you'll get this deeper understanding of, you don't need to act on your cravings. Actually, acting on your cravings is not what brings you happiness. You can get happiness by you'll get more happiness just by letting your cravings drift away and not chasing after them. So this is what this slide is all about. Let's just read it through. The idea behind Vipassana meditation is that by studying our own experiences with a focused mind, we can come to a deep understanding of the way the world is. That's what Buddhism calls wisdom. Wisdom is different to just knowledge. Knowledge is knowing stuff. Wisdom is knowing it deep down, as with every cell in your body knowing it, kind of thing, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? While all Buddhists agree with the three characteristics of existence and the Four Noble Truths, in insight meditation, people see them directly. They know in a deep and personal way the truths of suffering, non-self, and impermanence. They understand at a profound level that craving leads to suffering. This level of realization is life-changing and permanent. When someone fully realizes the second noble truth, i.e. the cause of suffering is craving, they begin to get rid of their craving. Therefore, the ultimate goal of Vipassana meditation is the attainment of nirvana, because basically, once you've seen those things for yourself, you've developed that level of wisdom or insight, eventually it will lead to a permanent change. You will see craving leads, when you've completely and utterly seen that craving leads to suffering, you'll just stop craving. When you've completely and utterly understood impermanence, you won't crave impermanent things. When you've understood anatta, you won't crave after being a particular kind of person. So this is, for Buddhism, the real destruction of greed, hatred, ignorance, all comes about through this process of deep understanding that Vipassana meditation leads to. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of tasks then. So first task is going to be to do with understanding the differences between them. So if on a piece of paper, if you can put this table in Samatha Vipassana, I'm going to put some statements on the next slide, and I want you to tell me if it's to do with Vipassana or Samatha. So just put Samatha Vipassana and write the statements below. So in the table. So each statement, decide whether it's about Samatha or Vipassana, and then write it in. Okay, here are the statements. So these are supposed to be statements that might be said by someone who's just been practicing either Samatha or Samatha Vipassana. So if they're just practicing those meditations, would they say which meditation would they have been practicing in order to say this statement? Have a go at doing it, pause it, and I'll just go through it afterwards. Okay, you could have paused it and done the task. Let's go through it. I am wise. Well, that should be Vipassana because that's wisdom meditation. I am calm. So I am wise is Vipassana. I am calm, Samatha, because it's about developing a calm and focused mind. I am having an enjoyable experience. Well, that will be Samatha, because Samatha is, at least the early jhanas are supposed to be enjoyable. It's accompanied by joy. I no longer care about having enjoyable experiences. That will be Vipassana, because if you're successful in Vipassana, you give up all craving. I will not crave anything ever again, Vipassana, because it leads to permanent changes. I am focused, Samatha. I do not crave anything now. Well, this should be Samatha really, because part of the process of Samatha would be that you overcome the defilements temporarily. So one of the defilements is craving for sensual pleasure. So you overcome that craving right now, but it might come back later. Impermanence used to be just an idea, but now I really feel that everything in the world is impermanent. That's Vipassana. You're bringing about that permanent change in your mindset where you understand things. Things go from being just intellectual knowledge to real understanding. I feel like a god should be Samatha, because of the link between the mindsets you develop in Samatha and the different levels of in the wheel of life. I've reached the fourth jhana, Samatha. I feel like a Buddha should be Vipassana, because that's one that gets you to enlightenment. The things that used to bring me pleasure now seem like sources of suffering. This should be Vipassana, because suddenly you've realized that craving doesn't bring you any real happiness, and so you've seen through the lie that sensual objects can bring you pleasure or happiness. I have developed a feeling of loving kindness towards all beings. That should be Samatha, because that's metta bhavana, the Brahma Viharas. Okay. Make sure you got them all written down in the right place. And let's move on to the next part of the lesson. Okay, so which is more important, Samatha or Vipassana, is the next part. I should say, this is a long video, and this is aimed to be for a double lesson. So do feel free to, well, it's up to you. You can pause it whenever you want, can't you? But, pause and take a break, and this would be a natural place to do it, because we're moving on now from the basic facts about Samatha and Vipassana to the debate between them. Okay, so the debate is this: which is more important, Samatha or Vipassana? Now, you might think from that there are some people who think Samatha is most important and some people who think Vipassana is most important, but that is not the case. Actually, there's two schools of thought. There's one school of thought which is Vipassana is more important than Samatha, and the other point of view would be Samatha and Vipassana are equally important. There is no point of view that says Samatha is the most important. Now, on the next two slides, there are a series of 6 points of view, and I want you to read them first, and if you've got highlighters, that's good. Highlight them. So what you're going to do for each one, you're going to highlight them to show, do they agree with A? Are they saying that Vipassana is more important than Samatha? Or do they agree with B, that Samatha and Vipassana are equally important? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, think how they can be criticized. You might want to write some things down. I've left the box clear underneath each one, so you can write some things down if you want to. What I want you to do is try and have a read through them and highlight them first. Pause the video and then restart it, and then I will go through each one and just discuss it a little bit. Okay, let's go through these arguments. Right, let's go through one by one. One very popular tradition of meditation today is the insight meditation movement, which comes from the teachings of the Burmese monk Mahasi Sayadaw. This tradition teaches that only Vipassana is needed to reach enlightenment. They argue, that's people in this movement, that people should begin by practicing Vipassana and that no prior practice of Samatha is needed. They argue that since Samatha meditation only leads to impermanent states of concentration, it is not useful for the path to Nirvana. So obviously this would be that Vipassana is the most important, it's more important than Samatha. So this meditation movement is extremely influential today, both in the Theravada world, in Burma, Sri Lanka, Thailand, but also in the Western world, particularly in America. Insight meditation movement is quite a big part of Buddhism. And there is this stress on saying, well, Samatha is not that important because it only really reaches these temporary states, like the jhanas. You should be trying to reach these more, you could be trying to reach the insight level, and why not go straight to Vipassana? Now, you could reply to that in a couple of ways, and it's worth saying that a lot of the time you can use these, in these 6 points we're looking at, you can use different points to reply to each other, if that makes sense. So two things you might say about this. One is that, well, you can use that parable of the simile of the bowl of water here and say, well, hold on, isn't Samatha actually really necessary? Because it's just very difficult to develop insight if your mind is all over the place. Surely you need to do some preparatory work, some preparation of concentration before you get onto insight. So that would be one response. And if you haven't got that, I'd write that down. Secondly, as we'll see later on, and as I've already mentioned, the actual idea that there is two different kinds of meditation, Vipassana and Samatha, is not present in the Pali Canon. It seems like the Buddha did not see these two forms of meditation as completely separate, let alone did he see one as better than the other. Okay, another of the most popular, sorry for all these noises, that means I'm just getting lots of emails at the moment. I don't know what they're saying, perhaps there's something very important, but I can't read them because I'm doing this video. So the next one says, another of the most popular approaches to meditation in the world, sorry, I'm just getting distracted. Another of the most popular approaches to meditation in the world today comes from the Thai forest tradition. This tradition teaches that Vipassana and Samatha cannot be separated, and that to get to Nirvana, people need to practice both together. Ajahn Brahm, a monk in this tradition, has written, some traditions speak of two types of meditation, insight meditation, Vipassana, and calm meditation, Samatha. In fact, the two are indivisible facets of the same process. Calm is the peaceful happiness born of meditation. Insight is the clear understanding born of the same meditation. Calm leads to insight, and insight leads to calm. So I would say these two traditions, the insight meditation tradition and the Thai forest tradition, are the two most influential forms of Theravada Buddhism in the Western world today. So I've already said the insight meditation one that was in the last square, very popular in America. The Thai forest tradition actually been quite influential in this country. There are a number of monasteries of the Thai forest tradition in Britain. And lots of people attend their meditation classes. And they have quite a different view, as Ajahn Brahm's quote shows. Ajahn Brahm is a monk, a famous monk in this tradition. So their idea is when you meditate, these two things kind of come together. You concentrate your mind and you develop insight at the same time. It's a kind of combination of these two things together. It's interesting, isn't it? What you might have noticed when I went through the Samatha and Vipassana, that it's a mindfulness of breathing. That one of the Samatha practices is called the mindfulness of breathing, but mindfulness is a word that's used in that's usually applied to Vipassana meditation, not Samatha. Well, that's because some people just say, look, there is no real distinction. When you meditate, you develop a calm mind, but you also develop a clearer understanding of the way the universe is. But you can't say that one form of meditation does one and another does another, if that makes sense. How could you respond to that? How could you respond? I find it difficult because it always seems more clear that these forms of that to me that the Thai forest tradition has got it right, seems more accurate Buddhist view. But what could you say in response? Well, I think one thing that you could say in response is, well, hold on, what about the jhanas? If the point of meditation is Samatha meditation is to reach the jhanas, then surely that means that meditation is not actually helping you to get to nirvana. You could say, well, it's surely samatha. Surely there is a separate thing called samatha, because samatha is aimed at a different thing, to reach the jhanas, and therefore surely samatha is less important because it's not actually helping you to do the most important thing, which is to get to nirvana. Okay, next one. When people argue that Vipassana is more important than samatha, they seem to be suggesting that certain parts of the Eightfold Path, e.g. the parts linked with wisdom, are more important than others, e.g. concentration. However, Damien Kin has shown that this is a faulty understanding of the path. In reality, all parts of the path are important and must be developed for someone to reach nirvana. Now, this is an interesting point, right? Is that we've seen this when we looked at the Eightfold Path. Damien Kin directly challenged that idea. Some people would say, the Eightfold Path, some parts are more important than others. Like, for example, ethics are not that important. And you might link in with that. Concentration is not that important. What's really important is insight and mindfulness that leads to insight. And that seems to be what the mindfulness movement is doing. They're just saying, look, all Buddhism is about is insight meditation, which is mindfulness and getting to nirvana through and developing wisdom. But Damien Kin says, no, actually, the Buddhist Eightfold Path is broader than that. It's about good conduct. It's about concentration. It's about mindfulness. It's about all those things. So if it's about both concentration and mindfulness, surely you need Samatha and Vipassana together. I would say, the only response you might say here is you might say, well, hold on. Okay, maybe the Eightfold Path is about all those things, but it still could be that certain parts of them are more important. In other words, yes, concentration is needed as a kind of preparatory part of the path, but actually it is mindfulness and Vipassana that gets you to nirvana in the end. Okay, we've got three more. The simile of the bowl of water says that we can only see ourselves clearly, gain wisdom through Vipassana, when we have stilled the water and cleared it of mud and leaves, i.e. calmed our mind using samatha. This suggests that both samatha and Vipassana are needed to reach nirvana, so obviously this is saying they're equally important. There's a nice, easy way to respond to that, which is to say, but actually you could say that the simile of the bowl of water indicates that Vipassana is more important, because you could say, well, yes, it says you need samatha, but it does also suggest that samatha is just a preparation. It's the thing that it helps you to get to nirvana, but it is just the first step, whereas Vipassana is the real thing that helps you get there. So I think you can use that simile both ways. Okay, next one. These are interesting ones. The Buddha practiced with two meditation teachers called Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta before he reached enlightenment. He is said to have reached the same levels of meditation as his teachers, but he left because he found that their techniques only led to temporary impermanent states of mind. They did not lead to nirvana. So this is important because this is true part of the Buddha's life story. When he first leaves the palace, because he sees the four sights, he leaves the palace, becomes a wandering holy man, trying to reach the truth. Before he tries to starve himself, the first thing he does is he goes to these two teachers. He goes to one teacher. He becomes the most successful, in everything the Buddha does in the story, he's the most successful person in the world at it, right? And that's what happens here. He goes to see Alara Kalama, and he becomes the greatest pupil of Alara Kalama. So much so that Alara Kalama says, why don't you become the head of this meditation school or whatever that he's got? Why don't you can become my partner in teaching? But he says, no, I've learned a lot in meditation, but this is not what I'm looking for. It's not permanent. Then he goes to Uddaka Ramaputta, and he learns more about meditation, different meditation techniques. But again, he's the most excellent student, and Uddaka Ramaputta asks him again to become the co-teacher with him of his organization. But the Buddha says, no, these are impermanent states of mind, and they're not leading me to nirvana, so he leaves and goes to do something else. And then he starts to starve himself, and that doesn't work, and then he sits under the tree and gets enlightened. Now, some people have argued that these two meditation teachers must have been teaching samatha meditation, and that the Buddha only reached nirvana when he developed his own technique, which is Vipassana. Why do they think that? Well, look at what he says. The states of mind that they lead to, Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta's meditation techniques, are impermanent, just like the jhanas. So lots of people have made the inference or come to the conclusion that these two people must have been teaching samatha. And it was only when the Buddha rejected that samatha and embraced vipassana that he got to nirvana. So if that's true, then vipassana is clearly more important to Buddhism, as it was created by the Buddha himself, not by someone else, and it leads directly to nirvana. So some people have even said, well, actually, this shows that samatha is not really Buddhist. It's kind of a pre-Buddhist form of meditation that was already there and that the Buddha tried and found didn't really work. What's the problems here? How could you respond? Well, the main way to respond is that there's no time in the story are their meditation techniques referred to as samatha. The Buddha never says, oh yeah, and then they were doing samatha and I found that wasn't really good, and then I did vipassana and that's what got to be enlightened. It's just those are just conclusions that other people have made based on the story. So it's a bit weak, really, as an argument to say that they were teaching samatha when the Buddha never said they taught samatha. Another way to criticize this is the last point. And let's look at this last point, which I think is really important. Later Buddhist tradition taught that samatha is needed as a preparation, but that it is vipassana which ultimately leads to nirvana. However, in the Pali Canon, things are not so clear. The Buddha does not speak about samatha and vipassana as separate practices, but just as different qualities developed in meditation. This is really important, right? The Buddha uses the word samatha and vipassana, but he never says, now you should do samatha, and then after that you should do vipassana. He just talks about them as different states of mind or qualities that you develop in meditation. So it seems like for the Buddha there was just meditation, and then there was samatha and vipassana within that. You had samatha and vipassana. There were things words that you could use to talk about your meditation, but not different kinds of meditation. So that would challenge the idea that one's more important than the other, because they're not actually separate. In addition, there are stories in the Pali Canon of people reaching nirvana by practicing only forms of meditation, which today are seen as samatha techniques. For example, the Brahma Viharas. So there are instances in the Pali Canon where someone just practices loving kindness meditation and gets to enlightenment just by practicing that. So that directly challenges the idea that vipassana is more important, because it seems like, even though from what we've seen about samatha and vipassana, it doesn't quite make sense, but it seems like people were able to get to enlightenment in the time of the Pali Canon just through doing samatha. How could you criticize that? Well, I put that last because I think that's a very difficult point to criticize, so I don't know. Okay, let's look at the last thing I want you guys to do. So look, here's an essay question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through a parallel paragraph based on some of this stuff. You can write this out in your notes if you want to, or or I can just I'll send you this as part of the slides, and you can just have this, because it's no point you writing it up. But what I want you to try and do is to write another parallel based on some of the other arguments in that we've just looked at. So try and put together a parallel based on some of these arguments. So I'll read through mine and see what you can do. So I've tried to color code it. So on this slide, I've got the point and the explanation. So the question is, Vipassana meditation is more important than samatha meditation for Buddhists. Discuss. And here's my parallel. So my point: some Buddhists have suggested that samatha is a pre-Buddhist form of meditation and therefore is not as essential to the path to nirvana as vipassana. Here's my explanation. The Buddha's life story tells, it should say not tell, of how he practiced with two meditation teachers, Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta, prior to his enlightenment. Although he mastered their techniques perfectly, the Buddha eventually left both teachers, as their forms of meditation brought only temporary states of mind, not the permanent happiness of nirvana. Since samatha is said to lead to temporary states of intense concentration called jhanas, some Buddhists argue that Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta were teaching forms of samatha meditation. As the Buddha eventually rejected these forms of meditation, this leads some to the conclusion that samatha meditation is neither distinctively Buddhist nor a necessary part of the path to nirvana. So that's my explanation. Here we have the response, and then the evaluation, and then the link. So here's my response. However, this view can be challenged because it is never actually stated in the Buddha's life story that the forms of meditation taught by Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta can be categorized as samatha meditation. Furthermore, in the Pali Canon, the Buddha does not even distinguish between Samatha and Vipassana as separate forms of meditation. Rather, he used the two words to identify different qualities developed during meditation. Here's my evaluation. As this indicates, the assumption that Samatha meditation is a separate pre-Buddhist form of meditation that is not essential to Vipassana Nirvana is not supported when we look closely at the evidence. Link back. Since the Buddha clearly saw Samatha as part of the meditation system leading to Nirvana that he taught, and not as a separate practice from Vipassana, it is clear that Vipassana cannot be seen as more important than Samatha for Buddhists. So there we go. So what I want you to do now is take another of the arguments, or a couple of the arguments that we've seen. The most logical one, I suppose, would be to talk about insight meditation movement versus the Thai forest tradition. And to see how those two things, or you could talk about the bowl of water, whatever you want to use, you can do. But I want you to try and write another peril of it, and if you could email it to me, that would be great. Okay, that's everything.